and that's the mission. The Scientific Research Council, making science and technology work for you.
For more information, call SRC at 876-927-1771.
Scientific Research Council, making science and technology work for you. With research and development,
SRC reinforcing Jamaica with added strength.
From the fields to the labs, we gather and review information.
Detailed research as a foundation,
combined with tech and innovation, working for you
to fulfill the
plan to develop and help uplift we nation. And that's the mission. The Scientific Research Council, making science and technology work for you.
For more information, call SRC at 876-927-1771.
Scientific Research Council, making science and technology work for you. With research and development,
SRC reinforcing Jamaica with added strength.
From the fields to the labs, we gather and review information.
Detailed research as a foundation,
combined with tech and innovation, working for you
to fulfill the
plan to develop and help uplift we nation. And that's the mission. The Scientific Research Council, making science and technology work for you.
For more information, call SRC at 876-927-1771.
Scientific Research Council, making science and technology work for you. With research and development,
SRC reinforcing Jamaica with added strength.
From the fields to the labs, we gather and review information.
Detailed research as a foundation,
combined with tech and innovation, working for you
to fulfill the
plan to develop and help uplift we nation. And that's the mission. The Scientific Research Council, making science and technology work for you.
For more information, call SRC at 876-927-1771.
Scientific Research Council, making science and technology work for you. With research and development,
SRC reinforcing Jamaica with added strength.
From the fields to the labs, we gather and review information.
Detailed research as a foundation,
combined with tech and innovation, working for you
to fulfill the
plan to develop and help uplift we nation. And that's the mission. The Scientific Research Council, making science and technology work for you.
For more information, call SRC at 876-927-1771.
Scientific Research Council, making science and technology work for you. With research and development,
SRC reinforcing Jamaica with added strength.
From the fields to the labs, we gather and review information.
Detailed research as a foundation,
combined with tech and innovation, working for you
to fulfill the
plan to develop and help uplift we nation. And that's the mission. The Scientific Research Council, making science and technology work for you.
For more information, call SRC at 876-927-1771.
Scientific Research Council, making science and technology work for you. With research and development,
SRC reinforcing Jamaica with added strength.
From the fields to the labs, we gather and review information.
Detailed research as a foundation,
combined with tech and innovation, working for you
to fulfill the
plan to develop and help uplift we nation. And that's the mission. The Scientific Research Council, making science and technology work for you.
For more information, call SRC at 876-927-1771.
Scientific Research Council, making science and technology work for you. With research and development,
SRC reinforcing Jamaica with added strength.
From the fields to the labs, we gather and review information.
Detailed research as a foundation,
combined with tech and innovation, working for you
to fulfill the
plan to develop and help uplift we nation. And that's the mission. The Scientific Research Council, making science and technology work for you.
For more information, call SRC at 876-927-1771.
Scientific Research Council, making science and technology work for you. With research and development,
SRC reinforcing Jamaica with added strength.
From the fields to the labs, we gather and review information.
Detailed research as a foundation,
combined with tech and innovation, working for you
to fulfill the
plan to develop and help uplift we nation. And that's the mission. The Scientific Research Council, making science and technology work for you.
For more information, call SRC at 876-927-1771.
Scientific Research Council, making science and technology work for you. With research and development,
SRC reinforcing Jamaica with added strength.
From the fields to the labs, we gather and review information.
Detailed research as a foundation,
combined with tech and innovation, working for you
to fulfill the
plan plan to develop and help uplift we nation, and that's the mission. The Scientific Research Council, making science and technology work for you.
For more information, call SRC at 876-927-1771.
Scientific Research Council, making science and technology work for you. With research and development,
SRC reinforcing Jamaica with added strength.
from the fields to the labs, we gather and review information.
Detailed research as a foundation,
Combined with tech and innovation, working for you
to fulfill the
plan to develop and help uplift we nation, and that's the mission. The Scientific Research Council, making science and technology work for you.
For more information, call SRC at 876-927-1771.
Scientific Research Council, making science and technology work for you. With research and development,
SRC reinforcing Jamaica with added strength.
from the fields to the labs, we gather and review information.
Detailed research as a foundation,
Combined with tech and innovation, working for you
to fulfill the
plan to develop and help uplift we nation, and that's the mission. The Scientific Research Council, making science and technology work for you.
For more information, call SRC at 876-927-1771.
Scientific Research Council, making science and technology work for you. With research and development,
SRC reinforcing Jamaica with added strength.
from the fields to the labs, we gather and review information.
Detailed research as a foundation,
Combined with tech and innovation, working for you
to fulfill the
plan to develop and help uplift we nation, and that's the mission. The Scientific Research Council, making science and technology work for you.
For more information, call SRC at 876-927-1771.
Scientific Research Council, making science and technology work for you. With research and development,
SRC reinforcing Jamaica with added strength.
from the fields to the labs, we gather and review information.
Detailed research as a foundation,
Combined with tech and innovation, working for you
to fulfill the
plan to develop and help uplift we nation, and that's the mission. The Scientific Research Council, making science and technology work for you.
For more information, call SRC at 876-927-1771.
Scientific Research Council, making science and technology work for you. With research and development,
SRC reinforcing Jamaica with added strength.
from the fields to the labs, we gather and review information.
Detailed research as a foundation,
Combined with tech and innovation, working for you
to fulfill the
plan to develop and help uplift we nation, and that's the mission. The Scientific Research Council, making science and technology work for you.
For more information, call SRC at 876-927-1771.
Scientific Research Council, making science and technology work for you. With research and development,
SRC reinforcing Jamaica with added strength.
from the fields to the labs, we gather and review information.
Detailed research as a foundation,
Combined with tech and innovation, working for you
to fulfill the
plan to develop and help uplift we nation, and that's the mission. The Scientific Research Council, making science and technology work for you.
For more information, call SRC at 876-927-1771.
Scientific Research Council, making science and technology work for you. With research and development,
SRC reinforcing Jamaica with added strength.
from the fields to the labs, we gather and review information.
Detailed research as a foundation,
Combined with tech and innovation, working for you
to fulfill the
plan to develop and help uplift we nation, and that's the mission. The Scientific Research Council, making science and technology work for you.
For more information, call SRC at 876-927-1771.
Scientific Research Council, making science and technology work for you. With research and development,
SRC reinforcing Jamaica with added strength.
from the fields to the labs, we gather and review information.
Detailed research as a foundation,
Combined with tech and innovation, working for you
to fulfill the
plan to develop and help uplift we nation, and that's the mission. The Scientific Research Council, making science and technology work for you.
For more information, call SRC at 876-927-1771.
Scientific Research Council, making science and technology work for you. with research and development.
SRC reinforcing Jamaica with added strength.
From the fields to the labs, we gather and review information.
Detailed research as a foundation,
Combined with tech and innovation, working for you
to fulfill the
plan to develop and help uplift we nation. And that's the mission. The Scientific Research Council, making science and technology work for you.
For more information, call SRC at 876-927-1771.
Scientific Research Council, making science and technology work for you. With research and development,
SRC reinforcing Jamaica with added strength.
from the fields to the labs, we gather and review information.
Detailed research as a foundation,
Combined with tech and innovation, working for you
to fulfill the
plan to develop and help uplift we nation. And that's the mission. The Scientific Research Council, making science and technology work for you.
For more information, call SRC at 876-927-1771.
Scientific Research Council, making science and technology work for you. With research and development,
SRC reinforcing Jamaica with added strength.
from the fields to the labs, we gather and review information.
Detailed research as a foundation,
Combined with tech and innovation, working for you
to fulfill the
plan to develop and help uplift we nation. And that's the mission. The Scientific Research Council, making science and technology work for you.
For more information, call SRC at 876-927-1771.
Scientific Research Council, making science and technology work for you. With research and development,
SRC reinforcing Jamaica with added strength.
from the fields to the labs, we gather and review information.
Detailed research as a foundation,
Combined with tech and innovation, working for you
to fulfill the
plan to develop and help uplift we nation. And that's the mission. The Scientific Research Council, making science and technology work for you.
For more information, call SRC at 876-927-1771.
Scientific Research Council, making science and technology work for you. With research and development,
SRC reinforcing Jamaica with added strength.
from the fields to the labs, we gather and review information.
Detailed research as a foundation,
Combined with tech and innovation, working for you
to fulfill the
plan to develop and help uplift we nation. And that's the mission. The Scientific Research Council, making science and technology work for you.
For more information, call SRC at 876-927-1771.
Scientific Research Council, making science and technology work for you. With research and development,
SRC reinforcing Jamaica with added strength.
from the fields to the labs, we gather and review information.
Detailed research as a foundation,
Combined with tech and innovation, working for you
to fulfill the
plan to develop and help uplift we nation. And that's the mission. The Scientific Research Council, making science and technology work for you.
For more information, call SRC at 876-927-1771.
Scientific Research Council, making science and technology work for you. With research and development,
SRC reinforcing Jamaica with added strength.
from the fields to the labs, we gather and review information.
Detailed research as a foundation,
Combined with tech and innovation, working for you
to fulfill the
plan to develop and help uplift we nation. And that's the mission. The Scientific Research Council, making science and technology work for you.
For more information, call SRC at 876-927-1771.
Scientific Research Council, making science and technology work for you. With research and development,
SRC reinforcing Jamaica with added strength.
from the fields to the labs, we gather and review information.
Detailed research as a foundation,
Combined with tech and innovation, working for you
to fulfill the
plan to develop and help uplift we nation. And that's the mission. The Scientific Research Council, making science and technology work for you.
For more information, call SRC at 876-927-1771.
Scientific Research Council, making science and technology work for you. With research and development,
SRC reinforcing Jamaica with added strength.
from the fields to the labs, we gather and review information.
Detailed research as a foundation,
Combined with tech and innovation, working for you
to fulfill the
plan to develop and help uplift we nation. And that's the mission. The Scientific Research Council, making science and technology work for you.
For more information, call SRC at 876-927-1771.
Scientific Research Council, making science and technology work for you. With research and development,
SRC reinforcing Jamaica with added strength.
from the fields to the labs, we gather and review information.
Detailed research as a foundation.
Combined with tech and innovation, working for you to
Fulfill the
plan to develop and help uplift we nation. And that's the mission. The Scientific Research Council, making science and technology work for you.
For more information, call the SRC at 876-927-1771.
Scientific Research Council, making science and technology work for you. With research and development,
SRC reinforcing Jamaica with added strength.
from the fields to the labs, we gather and review information.
Detailed research as a foundation.
Combined with tech and innovation, working for you to
Fulfill the
plan to develop and help uplift we nation. And that's the mission. The Scientific Research Council, making science and technology work for you.
For more information, call the SRC at 876-927-1771.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this year's edition of Conversations in Science, hosted by the Scientific Research Council. I am Ryan Shaw Phillips, team leader for the Analytical Services Lab at SRC and your chairperson for this evening's program. Thank you, everyone, sincerely for joining us today. And we know and promise that it will be a rich and rewarding conversation. At this time, I invite everyone to please stand for the playing of the national anthem. Thank you. Please be seated. I would like to welcome you again to this edition of the Scientific Research Council's Conversation in Science series. I want to start off by bringing greetings from our Executive Director, Dr. Shara Watson, who is absent today due to official business overseas. But she extends her appreciation to each of you for being here this evening as we gather to have a timely and deeply important national conversation. Now, if you know Dr. Watson at all, she's probably a little antsy right now and a little upset that she can't be here and is very much likely streaming as we speak. Tonight, we are joined by Dr. the Honorable Andrew Wheatley, Minister with responsibility for science, technology, and special projects in the Office of the Prime Minister. Professor Errol Morrison, Chairman of the SRC Board of Directors. Dr. Aisha Bailey, Moderator of this evening's panel discussion. Our esteemed panelists, Dr. Cliff Riley, Professor Thorpe, Dr. Ellis, Mr. Burrell, and Dr. Leowai Jr. We have members of the Strategic Committee of the OPM, members of the board of SRC, its management team and staff, special invited guests, the media, and of course you, our audience, both here and online. Welcome to you all. We meet this evening under the theme, Weathering the Future, Science, Food Security, and Smart Infrastructure for a Resilient Jamaica. This theme is not abstract. It speaks directly to where we are as a country and as a region. In the wake of Hurricane Melissa, we have been reminded once again that the Caribbean's vulnerabilities are not just theoretical. They are lived, they are real, and at the pace at which climate-related events are intensifying requires not only stronger infrastructure, but stronger thinking, stronger collaboration, and stronger science. Jamaica and the wider Caribbean stand at the front line of climate change. We face the intersection of extreme weather systems, fragile food systems, and the increased demand for data-driven decision-making within our country. So, tonight's gathering is not just another event. It's a part of our national response. and it is a part of the necessary rebuilding. It is a part of our responsibility to imagine and execute a future that is safer, smarter, and more sustainable. A little bit about the Conversation in Science series. It is one of SRC's core platforms designed to deepen public understanding of science and its relevance to national development. Through these sessions, the SRC aims to demystify science and technology, facilitate cross-sector dialogue, bring evidence-based insights into public conversations, and to bridge the gap between research, policy, and everyday life. Across Jamaica, and certainly across the Caribbean, some of our best decisions have emerged from discussion, exchange, and listening. And this series is our way of ensuring that Jamaican voices, Jamaican expertise, and Jamaican experiences shape the solutions that we pursue for Jamaica and, of course, the wider region. I know we're all here for the panel discussion, but before we proceed, we are honored this evening to have with us the Minister with responsibility for Science, Technology, and Special Projects, Dr. the Honorable Andrew Wheatley, who will deliver this evening's keynote address and also set the context for our discussions. His leadership continues to advance scientific research, digital innovation, and technology-enabled development across Jamaica. And his address tonight will set the foundation for a discussion as we reflect on strategies required to strengthen national resilience. Minister, thank you for your leadership and for joining us this evening. Please join me in welcoming Dr. the Honorable Andrew Wheatley.
Thank you very much, Madam Master of Ceremonies, Mrs. Rayan Shaw Phillips. You know, ladies and gentlemen, looking out in the audience, I see quite a number of familiar faces. I see my professor, Professor Errol Morrison, who guided me through the University of the West Indies. In fact, there's a particular story that I want to share before I go through the formalities. And Prof is not that story. This particular story or experience was at the point where I was about to finish my PhD. But this opportunity came up through the British Council. And it was a fellowship to the University of London. And I brought it to Prof's attention. I said, Prof, I need to graduate and go to the road. We need to get some food. Prof said to me, listen, whatever you are seeking out there will wait for you. This experience is once in a lifetime. Take up this fellowship and go. Just delay your PhD for some time. We have done all the work already. Just go over there. And Prof, I must say thank you for that advice. I also see quite a number of my own students. It would appear that this is a lecture. But apart from those students who did their first degree in biochemistry or molecular biology or basic medicine, I'm seeing quite a number of my former students who went on, I supervised their PhD. You know, just looking out there, I'm not going to call them by name. But I am sure that more than 60% of the people in here that you're going to refer to as doctor, they got their PhD with me. No, it's serious. It's serious. You want me to name them? You have Ryan, you have Cliff, Melissa, Not we, I mean, I could go on and on. You have so many students here. But it started, I believe, with Professor Morrison and Professor Simota. You know, they taught us not only the sciences, but also about life, and that is very important. But let me go through the presentation. The Executive Director and staff of the Scientific Research Council, and I must, interject at times in this presentation as I recall my own experiences as a student when we had to go to the Scientific Research Council to use their equipment. We were at the Biotech Center and also in Basic Medical Sciences, where the University of the West Indies did not have all the equipment. And we had to go to the SRC. In fact, one of my former students, Ryan, who is now employed to the SRC, went there. We had to send him over there to do some testing. And eventually, I guess they appreciated the quality of his work. And he has been working there for some time now. Distinguished members of our scientific community. And again, oftentimes in Jamaica, we do not speak about the scientific community as if we are ashamed to let people know that there's a very active scientific community. And the sciences is not only about biochemistry, pharmacology, anatomy, you name it. It's about engineering as well. It's about engineering in its core form, whether artificial intelligence, computer engineering, civil engineering. We are all scientists at the end of the day. We have amongst us representatives from our universities and other research institutions, partners from the private sector, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen, and I think I saw a couple of children here, boys and girls. Good afternoon. I must say it is indeed an honor to address you today under the powerful theme, whether in the future, science, food security, and smart infrastructure for a resilient Jamaica. And this theme, I don't know if the SRC thought about it before Melissa came. I see some nodding of heads that maybe you guys anticipated Melissa. If you had any contact with her, we'd have hoped you would have said, no, don't bother, come again. But this theme, ladies and gentlemen, is very much appropriate. I believe it resonates with every single one of us in here, and Jamaica on a whole, and in fact, beyond our shores. This theme is such a relevant theme. Long before I entered the halls of Parliament, in fact, politics on a whole, long before I was councillor at Mayor of Spanish Town, I don't want to give you another story. I remember when Dr. Notice resigned as mayor, and how the law set up on the resignation of the mayor, the deputy mayor automatically becomes the mayor. So, of course, I have to seek advice from Prof. So, I went home and I called Prof. I said, Prof, why, Dr. Notice resigned, and it looks like I'm going to become the mayor. Prof said, my boy. Excellent opportunity. But and I was lecturing at the University of the West Indies, and I was doing my research. And Cliff, you were my student then. And Dr. Cliff Riley is my first PhD graduate. And he was also the executive director at one point in his life at the Scientific Research Council. And I said to Prof, what do you think? Prof said, you're mad, man. My boy, we're going to talk. I'm going to call the principal. and arrange for you to have a meeting with him. That is Professor Kenneth Hall. So Prof called me the next morning and arranged a meeting with Professor Hall. I wanted to be the mayor, but I don't want to lose my job. So I went to Professor Hall and spoke to him, and you know what Professor Hall said to me? I can never forget this. He said to me, Dr. Wheatley, don't worry. We want persons who we have trained to be in the decision-making position in this country. That was a statement by Professor Hall. I cannot forget it. Cannot forget that statement. So, again, that is one story. So, before politics, I was in the lab. And I believe that's where everything started for me, my science background. I remember the long I was at the University of the West Indies, Prairie View, A&M, and of course, Imperial College, where I focused on the challenge and the breakthrough of research. My work in genetic engineering, tissue culture, diabetes, pharmaceutical properties of our indigenous material was not just an academic exercise. It was driven by a fundamental belief that Jamaican science holds the cure not only to issues affecting Jamaicans and Jamaica, but issues of worldwide importance. As a scientist, I understand the data. And the data tells us that the future we are seeking to weather is already upon us. So, let me just use this opportunity to speak plainly about our national reality. This challenge is not merely aspirational. It is existential. And the recent passage of Hurricane Melissa clearly illustrates that. There's no conversation now with us without us referring to Melissa. And it's not you, Melissa Powell. So Melissa Powell is another of my PhD students, Dr. Melissa Powell Sanders. After the hurricane, we had to message Melissa, say, Melly, you couldn't just stay a woman. Right? But our Melissa is a darling. Colleagues, between 2000 and 2021, and we're taking that 21 years period, intense hydrometeorological events such as hurricanes, storms, and droughts caused damage and losses exceeding US $870 million to our nation. That is over that 21 years period. I don't want to wait until hear the damage now. So over that 21 years, the damage was under $1 billion US. Infrastructure damage alone accounted for over 45% of these costs. And our agriculture sector has absorbed over US $190 million in losses. Now, these figures are minuscule compared to the recent near-apocalyptic visitation, which has left behind billions of dollars. Now, in a recent meeting with the World Bank and the IDB, their estimate, without actually going underground and doing an in-depth analysis, it came out at $8.8 billion US. So that one event eclipsed the 21 years that I spoke about earlier, where the damage was estimated to be under $1 billion. And we will recall the hurricanes. Ivan, when was Ivan? 2004. Ivan and other hurricanes and other climatic events. The damage then was under $1 billion. And right now we are facing a situation where just preliminary analysis. We're not looking at the costs associated with loss of manpower, working hours. We are just looking at the infrastructure, road network, buildings, homes. We're not looking at the contents of these buildings, the homes. And we are at $8.8 billion. And we anticipate that it will maybe pass $10 billion in real terms. Now, oftentimes when we talk about losses, we just look at the statistics in terms of homes and infrastructure. But we also need to look at the farms of real Jamaican families. Not the farm that the farmer plants his crop, but the farm of all families are impacted, the traumatic exposure, experience, the trauma associated with realizing that tomorrow or tonight you have to sleep under the stars. You pray that rain will not come. I've seen in recent days persons with some remnant of a mattress in the day covered it with zinc, just in case rain fall during the day. That is a cost that we need to calculate as well when we are putting together the number, or the numbers as to the cost of Hurricane Melissa. We must build forward, colleagues. And we cannot just think about recovery or rebuilding in a traditional sense. We must build forward smarter, stronger, and fundamentally more resilient. It is going to be a bit uncomfortable for some of us when we say we're going to rebuild in a resilient manner. But the truth is that if we continue to do the same things, or we always do it, and expect to get a different result if another hurricane should pass our way, and I can tell you, the persons who are like Paris and all those persons into data management and mapping and climate change will tell you that these events are coming more often than before. Last year we had Beryl, and some 15 months after we got Melissa. And this is very unusual for us. Oftentimes we get a little break, but not so anymore. And we must prepare ourselves now to brace for future events of this nature. And the only way we can protect ourselves as a people, as a country, is to be smarter in our approach and build out in a more resilient manner. Ladies and gentlemen, it is fitting that we gather today under the banner of the Scientific Research Council, an institution established by an Act of Parliament in 1960, and now in its 65th year of service to this nation. The SRC's mandate has always been clear: to facilitate the development of Jamaica's resources through scientific research, but more importantly, to transfer that technology across all sectors of society. And indeed, SRC, you are the bedrock of the practical applications of research. From developing the solar crop dryer that extends the shelf life of our agricultural products, to pioneering work on energy cane, to constructing over 300 and odd anaerobic wastewater treatment systems across Jamaica. In fact, the first time I saw it being implemented, it was at an apartment complex, and I was saying, this is home developed? Is this from the SRC? And in fact, one of the person who was rolling it out in that particular complex, because I went there to see a friend of mine, and he was the developer. And it was indeed a practical application of research developed and technology developed by the SRC. SRC, I must say, has done very well over the last 65 years. And I want to commend all those who have contributed to the SRC. Not only those persons serving now, but those who led the way some 65 years ago that has brought us to this point where we are celebrating 65 years of hard work and achievement. Now, as a scientist, and everyone here can identify with this, the reality is that Jamaica, the private sector, and even the governments over the years, we have not put enough emphasis or interest in the sciences. In fact, most of our private sector entities do not support research and development. We are more like traders. We buy a product, import a product, we slap on a label, we put a markup on it, and we put it out there. We have not done enough, apart from a few companies, to enhance, develop, create something new. Yet we have so much capacity that resides within our scientific community. We have so much capacity in the sense of the innovativeness of our people, but we do not invest. We do not invest in scientists nor the sciences enough. Oftentimes when we get our degrees, we go overseas and we contribute to the development of other countries. We are more appreciated as scientists overseas. And quite a number of my students, once they got their PhD, bam, get a big job overseas in a university or in a pharmaceutical company. This government, and this is not politics, under Andrew Holness has made a clear decision. Science, technology, and innovation must be central pillars of our national development strategy. Our National ST&I policy of 2022 provides the comprehensive framework for this transformation. It ensures that we shall not simply be rebuilding, but rather implementing all the scientific underpinnings to avoid vulnerabilities such as where we build, or we build, allowing for environmental security in agriculture, housing, health, education, and more. The policy sets an ambitious but necessary target to increase our gross expenditure on research and development. And I'm ashamed to say it, from its current low level of approximately 0.07% of GDP to 1.5% of GDP in 2030. So imagine, basically we're not spending anything on research. 0.07% of GDP. I tell you. And we are very ambitious. We want to increase that to 1.5% of GDP by 2030. So in the next 5 years, despite Hurricane Melissa, we are looking to at least spend somewhere between 1 to 1.5% of GDP in research and development. But I can tell you, as scientists, we are very grateful because this can really be a game changer for all of us. Our priorities are very clear, and they directly address the concerns embodied in the theme of today's conversation: food security, health management, environmental resources, education, and disaster risk management. And everything is now tied up when you think about where we are grappling with the after effect or the aftermath of the passage of Hurricane Melissa, weathering the storm, building out resiliency. I want to share my own expanded vision for our National Science, Technology, and Innovation Strategy Plan, the 2026 to 2035, that 10 years period. I call this, ladies and gentlemen, the House of Innovation. For too long, Jamaica's considerable scientific talent has operated in fragmented silos. The strategic intent is to end that fragmentation by bringing together or constructing a unified national ecosystem based on 4 pillars: the floor, the foundation, the walls, the roof. The roof, ladies and gentlemen, is very clear. That is governance. Ensuring unified strategic direction from the National Commission on Science and Technology and seamless execution through the SRC. Again, that National Commission on Science and Technology needs to be re-energized, revitalized, and not just meet every 5 years when the Prime Minister, the Governor General, on the advice of the Prime Minister, named persons to the National Commission. That National Commission should be the policy directors, the drivers of science and research, ensuring that we create policies that enhances not only the life of the science, but our innovative capacity, and that whatever policy we develop are policies that can be rolled out to the benefit of our people. It should not be something that you just have a piece of paper or a document on a shelf. You know, gone are the days when the common theme at the University of the West Indies was publish or perish. We publish to get promotion, whether from a lecturer to a senior lecturer to a professor. You know, we publish for tenure. We now have to evolve our thinking to the stage where we do scientific work to enhance the lives of our people. The other pillar is the academic backbone, linking our universities and research institutions into one collaborative research for development network. We can call it R4DE, R4D Jamaica, Research and Development for Jamaica. That network. You know, this individualistic approach is not going to cut it, because the knowledge does not reside, or the capacity does not reside in any one institution or in any one group of people. It is going to take a collaborative effort, especially seeing that funding is very scarce. We have to now work as a team and share the glory, because oftentimes we are selfish people, you know. Humans are selfish, we want the glory. But it is better to get a little glory than none at all. And that is why we have to collaborate and utilize the different skill sets so that we can achieve for the betterment of our own people and our own life. The foundation, of course, is the human capital. We have to invest in our scientists as a government, as private sector institutions, even universities. Again, universities need to move away from the days where we are supportive of a research because of the funding that comes with it. And of course, when we get the funding as research scientists or research group, the university gets its fair share because it is always in the university and the administrative costs and so forth. We have to also seek funding as universities, as research institutions, to support the work of the scientists. It must be a reciprocal approach, a symbiotic approach. And of course, last but not least, sustainability, the floor. Establishing a robust, blended financing approach. Again, the reality is that money is needed. Reagents, equipment don't just come like that. Even the scientists must feed themselves and their families. That is just the reality. So we have to provide financing to sustain the scientists, but also the work that the scientist is doing. Ladies and gentlemen, we begin at the bottom, securing the future of the structure with a robust and diversified floor of sustainability. This is our commitment, ladies and gentlemen, to a blended financing approach, moving away from year-to-year reliance on the budget to long-term stable funding, including our innovation levy. That is something that we need to look at, our innovation levy. Upon that stable floor, we poured the concrete for our foundation, human capital. This means invested heavily in our future scientists, scaling up the NEST program. And I'm glad that I saw a good friend of mine, Mrs. Francis, ensuring that our young minds are exposed and our teachers are exposed. This NEST program, I believe, is something that we need to put more funding, more support into. And that ensures that we are developing the minds of our young children, guiding them, steering them into the era of the sciences, becoming more, In fact, do you realize that when a Jamaican takes the sciences serious, that Jamaican is very, innovative. And oftentimes, they are captured from our shores by more developed countries. It is a reality. But we have to ensure now that as we invest in these young ones, that they are given the opportunity to establish themselves and see that it is not bad working or being a scientist here in Jamaica. That is how we have to do it. We cannot just create the young minds, develop these young minds, and then leave them for others to take them from us because of opportunity. We have to ensure that the opportunities reside here as well. So we are very competitive with other countries. The walls and structural beams of this house, its true strength will be our academic backbone. This is where, ladies and gentlemen, we link our top universities and research institutions into one cohesive research for development network. We are one national team. Whether we like it or not, we are on one national team. And finally, to give direction and protection to the entire structure, we place a roof of clear governance. This ensures the National Commission on Science and Technology provides unified strategic direction while the SRC handles the seamless mission-driven execution. This vision, ladies and gentlemen, requires a national investment that reflects its importance. A US $250 million investment structured over 10 years. I repeat it, we need around US $250 million worth of investment over the next 10 years. It's very difficult for us scientists to even contemplate that level of investment. But if we are to move forward, we have to take R&D serious. And it takes money. There's a politician who said that it takes cash to care. I don't remember who it was, but I know he said it. Yeah, it resonates. The structural beams of this house, ladies and gentlemen, the pillars that will hold it up, are our top tertiary institutions. We are positioning the University of the West Indies, UTEC, CASE, CMU, and the NCU not as competitors, but as a unified national team. Each, ladies and gentlemen, with a distinct and critical mission. UWI Mona, our deep science and climate engine, they will lead the region in high-level climate simulation, data modeling, and cutting-edge biomedical research, using systems like the Sparks supercomputer for high-resolution climate forecasts. UTEC Jamaica. You know, UTEC is famous for being a more practical institution. I'm a UWI man, you know, be careful. Our Applied Science and Research for Development Hub, that's UTEC. Their mandate is to bridge the gap between discovery and delivery, solving real-world engineering problems, developing building codes for resilience. That is important. We cannot allow people to go back and build shacks on the beach and then expect when another hurricane come, Melissa 2, Sophia, whatever name, and I hope no Sophia is in the place here. But another hurricane, well, let us call a man, Cliff. It's a male name, comes and then a category 5 hurricane comes and you expect things to be different. You know, building codes, we have to now revise the building codes to ensure, one, that we build in such a way that we are more resilient. That is something that, the Prime Minister and the entire government, we are very cognizant of that reality, that we cannot allow buildings to be erected in areas that are exposed, that are vulnerable to climate change. Whether it's a drought, whether it's flooding, whether it's the effect of hurricane, we have to be very mindful of that. So we have to have a more smarter approach to building. CASE, or National Food Security Hub, they will spearhead the research needed to inoculate our agricultural sector against climate change. And I must say that CASE has been evolving over the years. You know, we see where they are not just putting out teachers of agriculture, they are now getting involved in real research, and we must commend them. The CMU, the leader of our Blue Economy strategy, focused on marine science, logistics, technology, and turned the sea around us into a sustainable source of wealth and energy. The NCU, the pioneer of the nutraceutical revolution, unlocking the pharmaceutical and economic power of our indigenous plants. Ladies and gentlemen, I intend to implement what I call the lab share passport. That system to ensure our researchers share expensive equipment, as I was saying earlier, and the expertise across all these institutions for the national good. Ladies and gentlemen, the philosophy of our scientists needs to change. We have to create an environment where persons see our work, investors see our work. It's like a business. We have to put ourselves out there to encourage investment in our research, and so that we can develop products and solutions for, enhancing the lives of our citizens. You know, a house is as strong as its foundation. And that foundation, ladies and gentlemen, is our people. My journey started in Spanish Town. Humble beginning. My mother worked in a betting shop. But that does not limit us as a people. I'm sure all of us went through our different struggles. All the scientists here. It's not an easy, the song says it's not an easy road to be a scientist. Not an easy road. And that is why the ultimate priority of the House of Innovation that I spoke about earlier, I mentioned earlier, is the NEST, Nurturing Early Scientific Thinking Program. We have to scale up this program, and we are looking to earmark some $45 million to training thousands of teachers and equipping every early childhood institution with hands-on science kits. Scientific literacy, ladies and gentlemen, must begin in the minds of our youngest citizens. You know, I could go on and on and on, and I've, jump over a number of pages. Because as a politician, you have to read the room too. Not as a scientist. Scientists, we go up and we lecture and we talk. But I realize that, almost every politician is a scientist, because when we get a mic, is either we're a pastor, or a scientist. We just continue on. But the truth is, ladies and gentlemen, we are at a moment of inflection, overwhelmingly realized by our recent devastation. Our challenges, whether they are climate, health, economic, are all defined by science. Don't care what anybody else says out there. They are all defined by science. Therefore, a solution must also be defined by science. The government has already shown innovation in disaster financing, such as the US $185 million catastrophe bond issued in 2021, whose triggering mechanisms were defined using climate projections. So here everybody talk about this climate fund. You will recall around that time, you had a lot of persons saying, why we investing money in this disaster fund? Some of us don't even believe in climate change. But you will recall how all of us sat at home or during the days at work, waiting on Melissa to come. Melissa sat out there on the Caribbean Sea, on the hot water, and every time we say she coming up, she'll say, Melly, why you had us waiting. Took its time. I took her time out there in the sea. Climate change is real. And we just experience it in one event. And so that scientific approach of appreciating the impact of climate change allowed us to now draw down on some $185 million US through the catastrophe bond that was issued then. Science, ladies and gentlemen, is not separate from finance or policy. It is foundation. The success of the vision I have for this House of Innovation will not be measured only by the investments we make. It will be measured by the child in rural Jamaica who is inspired by the NEST program. That child choosing a career in agricultural engineering. It is the entrepreneur who launches a new export product validated by our upgraded ISO accredited laboratories. It is the farmer who harvests a record yield despite the drought because of research conducted at CASE and other such institutions. Our leaders at our universities and agencies like the SRC must embrace research for development. That network that we are building out, as I said before, cannot be done in isolation. No one entity can do it. If we come together as research institutions, as research agencies, as scientists, build out that network, that collaborative network, I am sure that Jamaica at the end of the day will benefit. We have to share our equipment, pool our expertise, and collaborate for the national good. To the private sector, you also have to invest in your future. You see the impact. You know, most private sector businesses love money. That is it. And nothing is wrong with that. You see, or you have experienced the financial fallout because we did not invest in R&D. We did not allow the innovative capacity of our people to build out more resilient solutions, whether it is in the built economy, whether it is ensuring that businesses are more resilient to these shocks. Because at the end of the day, it's all joined up. We are all in this together. The private sector need to use the available tax incentives on research and development to drive innovation in their own industries. And I'm not calling any name. The time for fragmentation is over, ladies and gentlemen. The time for excuses is past. The time for action is now. The storm came and more will come. The future is uncertain. But with science as our shield and innovation as our engine, Jamaica will not just weather the storms, we will master it. Ladies and gentlemen, as the saying goes, science solves, Jamaica grows. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Minister. We appreciate, as usual, your insights. And ladies and gentlemen, these are some of the perspectives that will not only navigate how Jamaica survives future events, but how we thrive despite them. So now we transition to our panel discussion. And at this time, we invite you to turn your attention to the screen for a video.
My name is Princess Lee. I'm an agronomist and the Deputy Farm Manager at Model Agricultural Productions Limited. In our very first crop cycle, we planted sweet potatoes. What we noticed was that the yield that we were expecting, we did not achieve that, and that was mostly due to the fact that we relied on slips from other farmers who would have had their potato slips for many years. Old slips that would have been carrying a heavy virus load and thus reducing our yield. Because of this, we thought that we needed to approach an entity that could provide us with clean plant material. And the person that came in mind was SRC, the Scientific Research Council. We approached them and explained to them our objectives and what we wanted to accomplish with our sweet potatoes, and they were able to give us two varieties, the Clarendon and the Yellow Belly sweet potato slips. We bought the tissue culture from them, which were F1 from the beginning, and thus we used those slips to plant outfield and to expand our own outfield nursery. Now with these F1 varieties that we would have received from SRC, we are expecting a significant increase in the sweet potato yields coming this crop cycle when we'll be planting them out. What we noticed in our very first crop cycle when we planted sweet potatoes was that the slips that we received from farmers before had a lot of pest problems. We had a lot of worms that would be affecting the leaves, and we also had problems with fungal issues and virus symptoms that would indicate a heavy virus load. This was, however, different when we bought our tissue culture plants and had our outfield nursery. We realized that all those pest and disease problems that we were having before in crop cycle 1, we did not experience that with the nursery. We didn't have to spray as much. We didn't have to spend a lot of time in the field. We didn't have to spend a lot of time using a lot of chemistries for fungus or bacteria or insect control. And this caused the expense for caring for the nursery went down significantly, and it also helped us to see that with clean plant material, the cost of production would also go down when it is that we're transplanting our slips from our infield nursery out into the production area. Model agriculture, as it says in our name, we want to be the model farm or the model concept. So we're always trying to introduce new strategies from Israel and merging them with what we do in Jamaica. In doing so, we are looked upon by other farmers in the surrounding area, for example, farmers in the agro parks, farmers in the Bushy Park and the Colbeck area, as to what it is that's going on here, what are the new things that we're doing, and how can they learn and benefit from it. So when we started our sweet potato nursery program with the F1 varieties from SRC, we were able to offer some of these slips to farmers in the area for them to test and see how well these slips are doing in their location. So far, the comments and the results that we've had from distributing to a few farmers has been exceptional. Their yields have improved because they would have planted long before us while we were expanding our nursery, and they saw where incidents of certain pests that they would normally encounter with the slips were a lot lower. Relying on us for information and guidance with some of the technologies and the different approaches that we would have implemented at Model has been beneficial to surrounding farmers and other entities in the farming community. I would definitely encourage farmers to go into SRC, because I realized that sweet potatoes weren't in the tissue culture lab. Sweet potatoes wasn't the only crop that they focused on in giving you clean plant material. They have ginger. I saw where they had some in their nursery. They had pineapples. They had several other crops that farmers can go to take a look at to see what's going on and how they can get clean plant material to improve their production. I'd like to extend gratitude to SRC because of how they walked with us in the process of getting our clean plant material, and because of how readily we were able to call to say, okay, we're having this issue, what can we do? And they catered to our needs, they catered to our objectives, and they helped us to realize that approaching production from a scientific point of view, from all angles, is very important in order for us to.
We transition now to our panel discussion, and we invite both our in-house participants as well as our online participants to begin framing some questions for the panelists at the end of the discussion. If you are in-house, we ask that you give a small indication that you would require pen and paper, and for those online, kindly leave a comment on the various platforms. To guide tonight's dialogue, it is my pleasure to introduce our moderator, Dr. Aisha Bailey. Dr. Bailey is the founder and principal consultant at MLR Technology and Innovation. Her specific focus on product and service development and capacity building in life sciences and health and wellness are important. Dr. Bailey's work focuses on the application of biotechnological and agro-processing methods in the development of novel products, including foods, pharmaceuticals, and cosmeceuticals, using medicinal plants and local agricultural inputs. Her experience includes consultancy, and training of more than 50 locally based institutions. She has developed scores of novel product formulations and has supported the development of new businesses. She also serves the academic community as a lecturer at the University of the West Indies in the Faculty of Science and Technology at both the undergraduate and graduate levels. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Dr. Aisha Bailey.
Thank you so much, Ryan, for the introduction, and welcome everyone. Good evening. We're having a very important conversation this evening, and as Ryan mentioned, we'd love to have the audience involved, whether you're at home viewing this or whether you are here in the audience, to start putting some questions together. The minister will also field some questions, so if you also have those, please go ahead and share those. 4 weeks ago, Jamaica suffered a devastating blow. And not only was it a really strong storm, it was the strongest on record. It rearranged livelihoods, disturbed landscapes, disrupted lives. And one thing we know for sure is that it seems like these hurricanes are getting more frequent, they're getting stronger, and they almost seem like they're getting smarter. Minister spoke about Melissa sitting down on the Caribbean Sea, taunting us for days, and just decided to make landfall. And I think as scientists, we oftentimes, in the face of catastrophe, we kind of have to figure out our exact place in being a part of the solutions that come. So I think, as the Honorable Minister has mentioned very well, as the scientific community, we can no longer function in a very abstract way, in some deep, dark lab. We instead have to come forward to create resilience for our country. He terms it a house of innovation. And in this house, this is where different scientific disciplines, different types of expertise, and different types of sectors will come together to ensure that our nation can withstand the big bad Melissas or Sophias or Johns that may come in the future, because they must come. And his vision is not only national, but I think it's also personal. You know, when the storm is coming, there's something that, there are several things that are common when it comes to our fears. So we watch the hurricanes and we worry about our roof, we worry about water, we worry about light, we worry about food. And as these storms get stronger and smarter, as I mentioned before, we have to be very clear in our minds as a community where exactly scientists and engineers and innovators and technologists sit in creating real and applied practical solutions, as we not only weatherproof our homes and our businesses and our communities, but we also weatherproof our country. And who better to help us explore than a panel of scientists? So we have an amazing panel. And if you have ever wondered about how we know which communities will flood, which places are the safest places to build a road or a business, where is likely to get significant hazards, where is crime and what type of crime is likely to happen and where, then you're likely touching on the work of one of our panelists. That is Dr. Paris Luai Jr., Vice President of the Private Sector Organization of Jamaica, geospatial technologist, expert, and data scientist. And he really takes very complex spatial landscapes and puts them into clear maps so that we can make decisions. Really very phenomenal, and we look some more into that. Welcome, Paris. Our next panelist straddles on the intersection of food and safety, especially when we're looking at cutting-edge technology. Dr. Cliff Riley, so talk about this small circle, this small band of colleagues. Cliff Riley was one of my lecturers, so was Dr. Wheatley. So I've really been, really under their wings for all these years. So it's really amazing to be with him again. And, in new and novel innovations and technologies, such as nuclear and radiation, and biotechnology at the time, which was like the nuclear science that is now. He will explain how important science is in understanding these different systems. He will focus on food and food security and looking at standards. He joins us as the Director General of the Hazardous Substances Regulatory Authority and will help us to better understand how biotech, agriculture, and safe energy technology is important in securing our future. So one panelist I'm going to now brag about. I knew him from I was the age of 11, and I saw him every week religiously for about 15 years. And it's very strange, actually, that we sit like this on this panel, because normally when we're sitting together, we're at home, relaxing, chatting, eating out our parents' food. Very, very different. But today, he sits not too far away. I'm really proud. As one of the Caribbean's foremost experts on climate, smart infrastructure, and structural engineering. His work spans highways, coastal and marine works, building ports, disaster reconstruction, and everything that really helps keep this house we call Jamaica standing in a storm. Welcome, Dr. Ellis, also a colleague from the University of the West Indies. We talk a lot about climate change, and we frame climate change, rightly so, as a problem. And if it is a problem, then innovation is a solution. And there are few people who know how to make that connection between climate change and new businesses and entrepreneurship as Carlington Burrell, CEO of the Caribbean Climate Innovation Center. Tonight he'll help us to understand and to bridge a gap between innovation, energy, tech, business models, and new industries, and how these can transform the way we prepare ourselves for and rebound from extreme natural events. Our last panelist, we have met for the first time, and I think he's going to cover the big elephant in the room, which is artificial intelligence. It's something that has been emerging over the past year, and I think it's very important that we take an opportunity to demystify this new technology and to understand how it can help us to predict, prepare, and protect. So he will look at how artificial intelligence, cloud computing, cybersecurity, big data can help us to strengthen our resilience, improve response times, and help us to move from reacting to anticipating disasters. Welcome, Dr. Thorpe, and please welcome our entire panel. So before we go into the full conversation, I want to humanize this amazing panel a bit. I know, especially for those of you who are not scientists, you hear all of these accolades and you're like, oh, these are strange people. In fact, I remember walking through an airport, went through the airport at immigrations in the US, and I hand the officer my passport. Cliff, what do you have as your occupation in your passport?
Biotechnologist.
Biotechnologist. Do they always?
Always wonder.
And it was the first time, because I didn't always have scientists. I always, for whatever reason, have, some odd, boring post. But anyway, eventually, when I changed my passport, I put scientist. And the first time the person looked at me and she said, "You're a scientist?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "It's the first time I'm meeting one of you." And I wasn't quite sure how to interpret it. I didn't know if it was the first time she's meeting a female scientist or a black scientist or a young scientist, but certainly scientists aren't that strange, right? So just to understand and to bring back home that there's a shared reality that we all share. Let's go back to October 28th. October 28th is the day that the strongest hurricane for Jamaica barreled toward and through us. The first question is, where were you? What was that experience on that day? And now 4 weeks later, when we're talking about recovery and resilience, how does your work and your organization's work play a role in our response and in our recovery and in our preparation for the next storms to come. So Dr. Parrish, we'll start with you. Where were you? And tell us a little bit about your work with the private sector organization and as a geospatial analyst and expert about the role of your work in us building resilience.
Yeah, thanks. October 20th was my birthday. Oh man. So that was quite memorable. But I was out and about, all over Kingston, up and down St. Andrew. During the guts of the storm, again, we were not getting the hurricane force that the West was getting. But for me, it's always very useful to get field validation about the stuff that Minister, you spoke about, the predictions. You're looking at what would happen. You look at when people say, oh, this is not so bad, whatever. But again, a hurricane is more than rain, it's wind. The dangers out there, again, I don't do this at home. I mean, I know what I'm doing. But it's the debris, the other kind of risks that are out there. I was out there during Beryl as well. Yes, there was a state of emergency declared, but again, the field validation is very important as a scientist to understand what we predicted, what could happen. We have had situations over the preceding 4 weeks of heavy rainfall, flood events that were happening had nothing to do with a storm. It was just afternoon rains, and New Kingston was flooded out. We see impacts of development all over the place. Is this causing debris that would not otherwise be on the road to be on the road? All that stuff I was observing. But the role of the private sector in terms of hurricane preparedness, hurricane response, is in many different ways. In terms of the financial instruments, the capacities that we have for supplies and distribution, all of these things were pre-mobilized ahead of the storm, and we're ready to go October 29. But I think that the lessons learned when we see generational change between the Gilbert generation and the Melissa generation. Melissa spoke about the 2000 to 2021 period, which we had Ivan, Dean, Sandy, the threat of Matthew. All of these guys were there. It's different now.
Yep.
Kingston is changing, Jamaica is changing, and it's very important that we realize this. What was not will be is not what will be.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Paris. And yeah, I'm going to make a note of that about what will be, about how we can predict the future so that we're better prepared for it. And we'll do that once we get through this round. So Cliff, the 28th of October, where were you? And tell us about the HSRA and the work that you do as a biotechnologist in our response and development of resilience.
My experience was quite traumatic because I was trapped in Paris. The airports closed, little notice, couldn't make it back home. And what was quite traumatic was those images, the images of Jamaica, the size of the hurricane, and the general information being presented. Jamaica is gone, Jamaica is gone, Jamaica is gone. When you're home, the story is a bit different because you're experiencing it in real time. When you're overseas, it's always a matter of the worst outcome. So having my family in Jamaica, all my staff here in Jamaica, and I'm so far away, it was very, very traumatic for me. Luckily, I got the first flight back to Jamaica. And when, after arriving in Jamaica, the focus for me was, what are the current hazards? And one of the things we do not consider as Jamaicans, the fact that we have over 1,700 radiological materials distributed across the country.
Wow.
We have nuclear materials in Jamaica. We have a lot of radiological materials in our hospitals, in the bauxite companies across the country. Seeing that image of the extensive flooding, my first thing when I got back after ensuring my family was safe and staff was safe is how do we account for all of these radiological materials? You have flooding in St. Elizabeth, you have extensive flooding in Manchester. How many of those radiological sources did we lose? How many cesium sources? What about our uranium sources? Can we account for them? So our concern was more from a radiological safety perspective, because if you have flooding and you have 2 or 3 cesium nuclear gauges in that water, you're looking at different category and
Yes.
levels of hazard. Why? We do not have the capabilities in Jamaica at this point to treat with radiological exposure at the medical level. So it was quite traumatic. A very good indicator for us from the Hazardous Substance Regulatory Authority in terms of the need to have a radiological disaster and incident response program and be very clear in where all the different radiological materials are located. Having extensive collaboration with Jamaica Fire Brigade, the JDF, our first responders, so as to ensure that we can account for every single radiological material. So that was quite frightening for us. Was very relieved on the 2nd of November when we accounted for everything. Everything was safe, nothing was exposed, all radiological materials are accounted for. We could report to International Atomic Energy Agency that yes, we had a natural disaster, but we lost nothing. No one was exposed to any form of radiological materials. It was quite frightening, Aisha, and there are a number of things we've been looking on from the HSR perspective. There are a number of expert missions we have organized so as to ensure that should in case we have any other form of disaster, whether it be a hurricane, flood, fire, earthquake, that we're able to account for everything to ensure we can protect all Jamaicans from any potential harm from radiological materials. And as we build out and expand in terms of exploring nuclear technologies for energy, it is something we have to keep in our mind in terms of that level of nuclear accounting and ensure that we're protecting every single person and organism in the country.
All right, excellent. I have one question before I move on to Dr. Layton. We have a very vibrant audience online. When you talk about radiological material and the risk to safety, the risk to health, can you just break that down very simply? When you talk about radiological materials, what exactly are you talking about, and why is this a problem, right? Why is this something we have to be concerned about? And then we'll get into more details.
We have elements in different state. We have molecules in different state. In their stable state, where it's like potassium and iodine, it's pretty much safe. But then you have it in an excited state, where there's no level of stability. You have more electrons, or protons, and neutrons. We won't go into the science. But what happens with radioactive materials? They have quite a number of tremendous benefits. We use iodine-131, for example, which is a radioactive iodine in terms of treatment. For persons or from cancer, we use it to do different diagnostic scenarios, looking at heart functions and so forth. So we use radioactive materials across the board. All of our bauxite companies use what they call nuclear gauges to look on their fill rate, the density. Companies that are filling bottles, even their fill gauges, we utilize radioactive materials because these are long, stable materials with very extended operating time. Some are short-lived, some are long-term materials. In the same way, we're looking on using uranium to produce energy. Why? You're looking at a 15, 25-year period for a single uranium cell core generating energy at no cost. So very, very impactful materials. We use them in plant breeding as well, including SRC. ISENS is our center for nuclear research, nuclear and radiological research. And they have extensive different type of materials throughout. So very beneficial, especially in medicine, very critical in terms of industry as well. But there are risks. If there are no clear guidelines for securing those materials, no clear guidelines in terms of your radiation exposure, it can pose more harm than good. It's a very, very useful material, but if not used properly, you increase the incidence of cancer in the long term. So that need to ensure there's a level of protection. And also, higher levels in the environment can lead to different mutations. Not like the Ninja Turtles, but you have mutation in different plants that can lead to new varieties, mutation in animals that can lead to new varieties. So for us at the HSRA, we ensure that all the systems are in place to restrict the amount of radiation that leaks out into the environment or the exposure to individuals, to ensure that it does what it is there to do.
Yeah, very, very interesting. All right, good, thank you. All right, Layton, where were you? And, you know, the big concern, you know, will the roof stay on? Will the road flood? Will the storm surge, destroy our coastal communities? This is the stuff civil engineers have to deal with.
Yeah, for me, unfortunately, I was not present like Cliff. I was actually in the far west in the UK, in the US. I was in California, chairing another engineering meeting while it's hit. And I was to return shortly thereafter, but then our minister decided, well, he had to. They closed the airport, and so therefore I was locked out.
Yes.
And I had to stay out for a couple of days until the first flight to the following Friday. Of course, during that entire period, it's traumatic because my entire family's here, and I am not here as the male over the household. And so that of course, my daughter would, Daddy, where are you? Why aren't you coming home? So you could imagine the experience I would have had in that sense. So it was good. I had good neighbors, so I must give thanks for that they were looking out and ensuring that things were going well. I heard about things falling in the yard, and that was another set of trauma. But then I have a lot of tech homes, so I had generators, all these other things. Unfortunately, we're able to weather it more than some others were able to do at that point in time. But on a wider scale, though, as the engineering fraternity, seeing what was to happen, we had those conversations prior, and we're discussing, what would happen at various scenarios we're playing in our heads. And if the power went out, if this went out, what would that look like? I left with the place looking nice and lush and green, and the whole water turned brown and everything was flat upon my return. And we would have, as quickly as it was safe enough to traverse the area, we would have gone out, a team or various teams of us would have gone out, focusing on the humanitarian side, because again, that was a main need, the response, but still looking at the recovery. And from an engineering standpoint, we have to be very careful. And you could imagine if you're going to a house and someone is there, they're worried, they're concerned that they've just lost everything, and you're coming to look at the size of their roof members. And you're taking up the roof sheeting and said, oh, this tore because of this. So you're looking at it from the scientific side or from the engineering standpoint. It could seem very callous
intrusive,
at that point in time. So we have to be very delicate in how we approach that situation and not capture as much as we would want to without looking horrible in that sense as well. So that kind of delayed in some of the responses. I just want to put a plug here because I know there's a great question from the citizenry about the engineering response. Now, in disasters, there are varying processes. The first one is, of course, the response rate and going through humanitarian aspect. The recovery side, which is kind of where we're at now, is where you're going to see a lot more thrust from engineering and from architects, from quantity surveyors, from all the professionals, because we are not first responders as professionals. We're first responders as humanitarians, but not as professionals in that regard. So you'll see a lot more assessment going through now. Persons wanting the roof back on their house. Now you're going to see us going out doing a lot of assessment to try and help with quantifying and to build back safer and stronger than you had it before. So look out for us. You'll see more of that in the weeks ahead.
Excellent.
Outside of that now, yes, when we did go and get a chance to look, we saw a number of things. We saw the roofs going for varying reasons, from as low as termite issues, and the termite knocking out one or two wood structures, which then, of course, creates an opening. That now goes down the other way. We saw spacing that were inappropriate for the size of the members. The size of the members may have been incorrect as well. We saw poles that were turned over when, in our estimation, should have been a little bit deeper. We have seen issues of course, flying debris, and that would have contributed to the level of disaster. The concrete structures naturally stood firmer than you would have with the timber structures. Slab roofs did fare better, so we make sure through that, but we don't want to say everyone should now run ahead and try and slab their roofs. A number of timber structures did survive, and I guess we'll get into it later on as to why they survived versus the others. So I don't want it to tell us now everybody go slab, because that's going to introduce a whole other issue, because hurricanes aren't the only disaster. We also have the issue of earthquake. And concrete roof can potentially be very hazardous in that environment as well. So we'll get into those details as we go forward.
Yeah, and very interesting. And those vulnerabilities, I'm hoping both yourself and Paris can tell us what the data is showing. You talk about slab roof and the heat, okay, is another thing. And I think it's one of the reasons why, cosmetic is also one, but the heat that brings, and in the face of climate change and increasing surface temperatures, sometimes the slab roof doesn't seem like the best choice. Carlington, you are on the interface of climate change and what it means about solving, about building resilience and adapting to climate change and looking at that as a part of the development of businesses. Talk to me a little bit more about your organization and what it does and how and its role in now helping us to weather the future. But before we get there, tell us your story of October 28th.
So October 28th, like my colleague here.
What?
Yes.
Hold on.
Hold
on.
We're all out. We're all locked out. We're all traveling. All out.
So myself, one of my staff, and 5 of our entrepreneurs were in Warsaw, Poland.
Wow.
So
far away.
Far
away from home.
Yes. But why we're there is that over the years we've been supporting very early and seed stage businesses and ideas, and that this year marks 11 years since we've been in existence, and we thought that now it's time to, raise the bar, start supporting, more advanced entrepreneurs, and we think that they would be able to more scale. And so we concluded one of our programs with a demo day just a week before. And so, this is the time for us to travel. We're actually there, just talking to investors, looking at new markets, and so forth and so on. So the experience was a little bit traumatic for all of us present, which is like 6 of us that was actually there, and their family members that, were back home and everything. So that was a little bit traumatic. But the moment the hurricane came and passed, we were immediately looking at responses. How do we respond to the aftermath of the hurricane? And right there and then, I must say, and I must commend the Development Bank of Jamaica, and I must commend the Caribbean Development Bank, because while we're there in Warsaw, immediately I had contact from both institutions, requesting or asking, how can we support? In what way can we support? We were looking at, one, how our entrepreneurs were impacted, and 2, we want to look at our entrepreneurs and the businesses and the services and the products that they provide. How can we have these integrated and scale in these communities? One, we want to look at the community, from a community deployment and an individual deployment, because what we're looking at is, livelihood. Everyone, while it's critically important, for survival, the fisherman is thinking about their boats and how they can immediately start fishing. The farmer is the same thing, and with our entrepreneurs that we had there, one entrepreneur in agriculture, we had one in energy, and another one in recycle and waste management. So at the same time, we're looking at how can we use our entrepreneurs' products and respond to the aftermath of the hurricane. Now, we're going to get into more details and how we do that, but, so it was very traumatic. And right now, we're putting a response team together and looking at our entrepreneurs that we're looking to scale in these areas.
Yeah, good. Yeah, I think, you raised the issue of livelihoods, and how we restore that. And I know Paris and Cliff are also very integral in that work, and we look at that a little bit more.
Yeah.
Dr. Thorpe, we're in foreign. Where are you?
Well, I'm going to be the exception to the rule. I was more doing local tourism in my home and observing what is happening in the
Paris,
country.
you're not an exception because you're outside in the storm. That was very foreign.
and I guess also, Paris probably a little bit more extreme than myself.
Yes.
A pleasant good afternoon to the panel, the audience here, and those online. So I'm Sean Thorpe, the Dean of the Faculty of Engineering and Computing at the University of Technology, Jamaica. On the 28th, I will just give you a precursor. On the 27th, at about 5 in the evening, all the deans of the various faculties and colleges at UTech, along with the Deputy President, we were in meetings just looking at the situation in terms of the closure of the university and how it would impact staff and students, which was one matter. But we were all busy preparing for, Hurricane Melissa at the same time, trying to balance work and home. When the storm came down on a Tuesday, we were very concerned and I was very concerned about the fact that, listen, I remember in 1988,
those of us young enough to remember Hurricane Gilbert, which was a Category 3, and reflecting on this storm being a Category 5, I said to myself, I've never lived to see anything like this. I don't think we'll live through something like this again. We hope not to.
I hope not to.
And my concern was, the disaster it would project to bring. And of course, I had AI in the background at home. I have machines, and I spin up using tools to start looking at weather data. So I started looking at all the forecasts that was coming into Jamaica, yes, along with our own local forecasts, and trying to predict where exactly the storm would hit, in which targeted neighborhoods it would reach first. And I was saying, unfortunately, the West is going to be hit again. That was my concern. I said, oh my word, I'm very, very concerned for the entire public who would be in this situation. So I spent the time doing some prayer with family throughout the time. To be honest, I spent some time praying about the situation and just hoping for the best. And I think all of us here in Kingston this afternoon and those online who can be in this forum must give thanks.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yes,
so I just want to preface my introduction of point based on that. So the context in which I, be a part of this panel to support the conversation is that just a few days before the hurricane, we were getting busy to look at launching the National AI Laboratory, right? I mean, there's an initiative that you may know about with government tied to UTech and the other stakeholders, Ministry of Education, Hartrust, and the Amber Group. That had to go on pause, right? We had other initiatives in the university for which we would have had some launch events. All of those went on immediate pause. And recognizing now, coming out of the 28th into the 29th, that, listen, we just got hit by a hurricane. The viewpoint was that, listen, this looks like a rebuild effort. I don't know what the scale of it was. Of course, when I looked at my home, my roof was still there, thankfully. But I know in communities out west, we know that we couldn't reach certain friends and family at the time. So I know something was very serious. So I'm using the opportunity to give thanks and now looking very carefully at the applications of artificial intelligence, which I describe as a digital lifeguard. The digital lifeguard that is going to support public safety and national security against climate threats. And I'm going to leave it there until we go through the big arguments. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Welcome, panelists. Good start. You mentioned using AI at home to track the data. And I think one experience, track the hurricane rather. And one experience that I think was very different this time around versus the past few storms is having access to these apps, Windy, Zoom Earth, that almost, gives you, real-time tracking data on where the storm is and what you can expect. Paris, talk to us about the data. What does that actually mean? What is this data that geospatial analysts like yourself are pulling on to help us to predict storms, and then after a storm to map exactly what has happened?
The important element here, especially from the geospatial realm, is for the proper application of data and the use of it downstream. Not just for scientists, but for decision makers, the general public, the media, business leaders, etc. The data is out there. You mentioned Zoom Earth and Windy and so on, but those are, in the grand scheme of things, from a hardcore scientist, those are toys.
Interesting.
Right?
Wow.
You want to be a scientist, you want to make real serious decisions, you have to be serious. The most critical thing about the difference between these toys and a serious application of the science is scale. The ability to zoom in on your house and to not just see a building or footprint there. You need to know how many people are in that building. You need to know what is the address of that building in the event of a recovery or rescue operation. You can't do that on Zoom Earth or Windy.
That's right.
The ability to put on information where the nearest shelter, the shelter occupancy level, right? The shelter data can use the data that's providing and feeding Windy.
Okay.
But the ability now to be able to zoom in on that house, to scale out on that neighborhood, bring up to the community, the constituency level for the political leadership, the parish level information, all of that information has to scale at the same time. The same source information, same meteorological data, but it's now being passed in with social data, economic data, infrastructural data, all at the same time in order to make it meaningful. The storm data is just the base. The next level is where the science really happens.
So Doc, this is not theoretical.
No.
We have been able to utilize a lot of this finer data to capture, tell a real story
Absolutely.
of Melissa and others. Can you give me some real examples? Give the audience some real examples of the pictures.
The thing is, if to become a little metaphysical here, there are pretty much 8 billion realities right now. Everybody has their own story. The story you're talking about is that the same storm
Yes.
has generated, 3 million different Jamaican experiences. Each of us here today had a different story. The reality is that how you curate that data, how you use that data to begin to make a decision, to begin to figure out how to prioritize resources, responses, etc., becomes real. It's not abstract. It's not a tabletop thing. It's not flat. To be able to handle this thing. And the fact is also that the data changes.
Right.
People are, what are you going to say? That the storm was supposed to stay still? It's always going to stay a tropical storm? The models were saying that this thing is going to hit Jamaica. Where are we getting this idea that we miss it? The storm is a line. The storm is not a line. The eye itself was 20 miles wide. Right? Or the eye is the calm part. The calm part moves. You have to go through the worst part to get to the calm part, and then there's the worst part after the calm part. I mean, a lot of nonsense was out there. That the hurricane, Kingston wasn't hit by the hurricane. I mean, what happened? We got Hurricane Gus for sure.
Right.
So again, the ability, and this is where a lot of the noise in opinion, fake news, all that type of stuff, and where science really has to fight back.
Yes.
Not just be passive, because again, and Minister alluded to it earlier, we tend to be more gentlemen. Meet some women on this stage, more women on this stage. But the fact is that we have to push back. The loudest voices, the noisiest voices are always the most ignorant voices, and I'm frustrated with that. So
Yes. Let's talk, because I know you had some interesting data on buildings pre and post storms. Okay, Lane alluded to that during his comments about the vulnerabilities, and even though there have been some preliminary assessments, there are some kind of telltale signs and data as to the vulnerabilities. Does your analysis so far almost predict or paint a picture as to where the most vulnerable areas are across our country? And then as a follow-up to that, Lane, you can speak about what you're now seeing on the ground.
The models, by and large, were very accurate.
Yes.
But I have to distinguish between October 28th and the period leading up to October 28th, where we had a lot of rain. So the soils were saturated. Lots of things were happening in the physical environment before the 20th of October. And on top of that, which is where hazards, and hurricane is a hazard.
Yes.
Hazards become disasters when they begin to affect lives and property.
Okay.
That's when it becomes a disaster. So the disaster part has a human and a property component to it. What we saw, that's the vulnerability model that we created for the storm. I think that's what's on the screen right now. When you look at what you're seeing on the screen right there is the vulnerability model that was created as baseline.
Right.
This has existed before.
Right.
This takes into account population density, population growth, income, workforce characteristics. It looks at property values. It looks at everything across the area.
So the dark orange
most vulnerable.
Is the most vulnerable. Okay.
Road access,
Okay.
history of disasters,
Okay.
all of those things. So this existed before the storm.
Okay.
It's just that these areas are going to get affected worse. Now, we saw in Montego Bay, Leighton, where you saw the Pies River and a lot of the river broke its banks, and you could see the impact on the business process outsourcing industry and so on. We saw storm surge effects along the coast, all of those type of stuff. This is what you expect.
Yes.
But again, the kinds of nothing in Melissa was physically surprising. Physically, it's all within the realm of possibilities. We knew this was going to happen. Minister alluded to this earlier. The difference between a hazard and disaster is people and property. Japan gets hit by super typhoons regularly.
Yes.
175 mile an hour, 190 mile an hour, that's normal. But again, when you have a society that is built to a high standard and a population that is properly prepared and trained, you begin to see that difference between a hazard and a disaster.
Understood. And I want us to come back to that a little later on. For the entire panelists about, what he said, not much of what we saw was surprising. How does the scientific data, the predictions, help to advise and mobilize our preparedness and response? And we'll look at that a little bit more.
It's damn scary, but just not surprising.
Absolutely. So Leighton, you saw the map of the vulnerability assessments. Paris says, not particularly surprising. That's a geospatial picture. You are now boots on the ground. What are the actual vulnerabilities that you are seeing? And as Minister alluded to, we can no longer be building shacks on the sand. What does the building code need to change? Because maybe the building code is fine. It is more just enforcement.
Yeah. Well,
I'll hand that to you.
It's a multi-disciplinary, it's a multi-layered challenge. The codes typically are used by the engineers or the professionals. When you come down to the grassroots level, where you have the majority, they cannot understand it. Nor was it designed for them to understand it that way. No, but there are more user-friendly documents that do exist for the general populace. But then again, the format that is in, one, access, are most aware of it, that it exists. Two, can they access it easily? Three, will they be able to use it? In our field, in the construction space in particular, it's not uncommon. It's well known that a lot of the persons operating there may not all be at the same educational level.
Yes.
And their ability to read and interpret certain documents that are used in construction may have some variations there as well. So we're not trying to throw anybody under the bus, but we're just saying that we have these variations. So a lot of the structures that we're seeing were built by just homeowners who may find a guy in the community who would have assisted him in building.
Yeah.
Now, unfortunately, when it comes to building, most times persons just follow what they had seen. So if I saw a structure going up one place and it was this spacing and that spacing, then I don't know the science behind why it needs to be this spacing.
Right.
So if the person say I only have $10, then I'm going to design or engineer a package for you that fits $10.
Right.
So if I have to use 2 where it requires 4, I will use 2 instead of 4. And so a lot of the challenges that we're seeing actually stems from that. Now, how do we correct that, of course, is the question.
Yes.
The main one, because ignorance, as they say, is the most expensive thing.
Yes.
People perish for a lack of knowledge.
Yeah.
And so when you come back to that whole ignorance thing, for the homeowner, they don't know whether it's correct or not. They are trusting almost implicitly this builder, this contractor, to build them a safe home. Then now, when you don't bring in the professionals, this is again a professional plug, that comes in from the architects, the engineers, the quantity surveyors, who, let's use the QS for example. The quantity surveyor will give you an accurate pricing as to how much your structure should cost you. And if you use that appropriately, it will come out very close to that costing. The architect will design you a safe, comfortable space in which to operate. The engineer will design you, again, a safe structure that can resist earthquake, hurricane winds, and all these other forces that are commonly expected to be impacting upon that structure. All of this is known. Now, of course, the homeowner is saying, I can't pay for this.
Right, yes. QS can say whatever
So I can't pay for this. But as we are seeing now,
yes,
it is more expensive
yes,
to come and rebuild everything than to have done it correctly the first time around. So do we need to find some way where now we could say, all right, let's find a way to work together? Because you need a professional. It's not a question if you should have it. It's a need.
Okay.
So you need a professional, and maybe now we come in at strategic points in your building process to assist with checking when you're pouring your concrete. Make sure it's quality. When you're putting up certain members, to make sure the spacing and things are correctly done. The fasteners are all there. Most times you'll see things going in, let's say a window, for example. The manufacturer says it needs 6 screws. The person building it may say, well, 4 can work.
4 can work.
4 can work. So you will cut those corners thinking that I'm in a safe structure. Yeah, he knows what he's doing. Now 4 can work for just functionality purposes, as in it stops maybe a regular rainfall from coming in. That is true. But you're not trying to spend your life savings on something to protect you against regular rainfall. You want something that is going to be resilient enough to deal with all these issues. And so I again implore you, seek professional assistance. Now again, as professionals, we need to figure out how can we assist the small man.
Yes, absolutely.
So that we can match his pocket if so.
Yes, right.
To give him some of the benefits so that we don't have to come in the back end now and say, oh, we're so sorry. Because what can you do with sorry now?
And that's a science education, really. How do you translate scientific engineering information to the regular man in the community who is building that community? I think it's an important consideration.
We have some solutions for that, but we'll talk about it later.
Yeah, absolutely. Paris, you had some.
No, I was just going to point out that there was a slide on a while ago. The top right image on the slide were all the destroyed buildings.
Okay, I don't know if we can pull that up.
The reds are all the destroyed buildings.
Okay, so so this is his. So the one on the left is
the one in the top. The one in top right. The top right
right.
with the red. All the reds are 11,000 destroyed, not just damaged, destroyed, flattened.
Wow. Paris, let me ask now. What data are you using to be able to map that?
This is from the GeoJ's Satellite Imaging Corporation.
Interesting.
So this is not mine.
Fine.
But
okay.
This is how we
the
use
the data sets,
to overlay.
And these are all the destroyed buildings.
The red buildings are destroyed. Oranges are the seriously damaged buildings. The yellows are partially damaged buildings. Total about 70-something thousand, but 11,000 red dots right there.
Yeah, that's
so can I
devastating.
Jump in?
Yes, please.
What Paris has there is a very interesting risk map, right? Post-event, right? If we are going to talk about the leverage of artificial intelligence in this conversation, we need to be preventative.
Yes, yes.
I mean, arguably, Melissa 2.0 coming this side of the island, I would like to look at that map real time and determine which specific neighborhoods and communities are likely to be hit next, such that we can have a recovery mechanism put in place real time with repair crews, supplies, all intact to move to each specific community across the country. And that is where, from the scientific point of using artificial intelligence, for the language of the public, I call it the digital lifeguard.
That's what I was gonna. I was kind of butting in to say. Let's go back a little bit. Artificial intelligence. Define that in its simplest terms, and what does that application on using it to assess vulnerability, and to determine in real time where we need to go.
Good point.
Yes.
So, artificial intelligence, in simple language, is taking human intelligence as we have it and passing it to the machine to support the intelligence that we want the machine to help us articulate real time. So therefore, the machine can actually support the algorithms that will help us develop the models
Yes.
We have many students at UTech doing that now. Some are even here in this audience this afternoon, even working with Paris, right?
Yes.
And what obtains is that the AI has reached a level of maturity over the last 50 or 60 years, such that what we used to study in school has now become the reality that is so fast-paced that since 2022,
Yes.
with the advent of generative artificial intelligence, we're seeing a situation where you can literally, at the prompt, at an interface, quickly plug the data that Paris has, the geospatial and weather data, overlay that data to provide specific forecasts. I don't want to call it local specific forecasts as to what is happening in each location, such that we can resource position all resources that need to be on spot in the communities ahead of a hurricane or any other type of natural disaster.
Yes.
We have not properly leveraged that. I heard Commander Gill this evening on the 5 o'clock news coming here
Yes,
to this
yes.
talk, talking about using AI as a part of his mechanism now going forward for ALPEM, and he's right. So therefore, we have not fully taken advantage of this powerful software tool, to keep the language simple. It's a powerful software tool, that's what artificial intelligence is,
Yes.
that allows the community to be prepared in terms of its capabilities to move in the event of natural disasters. A simpler way to put it is early warning systems.
Yes.
Early warning systems to support the outcomes of what we now face in Jamaica. I mean, in the last 2-3 weeks, I realized that the Philippines, to follow on what you mentioned about Japan, the Philippines had 2 cyclones back to back. And I said to myself, Jamaica would want that in a minister. Back to back. Thailand, just a night or 2 ago, actually is under heavy flooding. So the climate factors are real.
Yes.
Right? So
I wanted to expand a little bit more on what you said, and it's linked to what Minister spoke about, this immense talent that we have in our universities, and how do we support that work. You mentioned that you have some phenomenal students who are working, leveraging AI, developing some technology.
we host the national and regional AI program
Excellent.
at the University of Technology, Jamaica.
Talk to me about how we transfer these prototypes, these technologies into ready to deploy solutions.
We have already started.
Okay.
We have already started, which is why the practical oriented concept of what UTech represents is not a situation where we are saying we want to do these things. Students and staff are working on projects currently, right, with local companies to support these outcomes. Some are working with Paris right now. Well, I was impressed to see that you have an intern with you who can look at some of this data. So there are several students, both in computing and engineering, primarily, but we really want more persons in the various subdisciplines of the sciences to be able to come into this space.
Yes.
I could argue that a data scientist sits in every scientist.
Yes, absolutely right.
And I've always said that, even in the university community, but it's not properly leveraged. So, God forbid, we didn't want a hurricane to come. To now, let us realize that we must leverage the use of this to support these outcomes.
So many of the technologies that we use every day started in a garage, started in a small student lab. Carlington, you are dealing with a lot of these innovative young people, innovative ideators, and actually developing true enterprises and businesses. What's the process? What do we need to start looking at in getting some of these real opportunities?
I kind of want to segue from what Prof just discussed about the innovations in the universities.
Yes.
So that's what we call the brown economy. What we've been seeing is quite a few PhD students have developed very innovative ideas and very innovative solutions, but they stay patents.
Yes.
And that's one of the big challenges that we have seen over the years. These great ideas sitting, as patents and, not being marketed, not being commercialized. So what has happened over the last couple of years that the Development Bank of Jamaica have actually established a few TCSOs, which is Technology Commercialization Sub-Offices.
Yes.
And the Scientific Research Council has one of those offices now.
Okay.
That they are commercializing these patents that has been developed by students in the respective universities.
Excellent, excellent.
And I think that one of these offices also is located at the University of West Indies, and there's also one at the University of Technology. So what we want to see is the commercializations of these brilliant ideas that has been developed by these students.
Absolutely.
And there's funding. There's a patent grant that exists at the Development Bank of Jamaica.
Yes.
There is enough, there's funding to start commercializing these offices. And we encourage persons to come in, to call in at the SRC, call the CCIC. You can also write to us. And we help, whether it's idea, prototype, or you're actually commercialized. If you're commercialized, we help you to scale into new markets.
Excellent,
But,
excellent, excellent.
you know,
Thank you so much
some of
for
the things
that.
we do.
Yes.
Mhm.
We're gonna switch a little bit to food. I like bumpy banana, I won't lie. I prefer it to the normal banana, right? And post-burial, it seemed to have been the only banana we could get. Up to about 3 weeks before, if you kind of feel like, okay, now we're kind of getting back into our normal banana varieties. And then here comes Melissa. And it is really just a microcosm of what storms and these natural disasters mean for food security. Talk to me, Cliff, about, those vulnerabilities. We know that, the breadbasket has been hit. I think we're all worried about what that will mean very soon in our supermarkets in Kingston. But what are the real vulnerabilities that we're now seeing 4 weeks after the storm, and what do we need to be preparing for to ensure that we can minimize these moving forward?
I'm happy you brought up that question, Aisha, because when we look on the realities across the region, we have the last CARICOM report states that we have 3.2 million English-speaking and Dutch-speaking persons who are currently food insecure.
Yes.
42% of the Caribbean. So what it means is that as a region, we're not able to feed our people. We have limited access, limited availability, poor utilization, and it's not being grown sustainably. Utilization coming from the nutritious value of our foods. We're not getting adequate nutrition from our foods that we're producing. So we've seen extensive levels of undernutrition across the entire population. And Prof. Morrison, we have looked so many times on obesity across the region, not because of persons not being able to access food, but the type and the quality of food that they're consuming.
Yes.
And one of the reasons why I have one of the highest incidence of diabetes across the CARICOM region as well. When you look on the entire mechanism, and it sounds a bit harsh to say that Melissa is a wake-up call. I don't know how many persons in this room dread Christmas when they have to go to the supermarket, go to the markets or to the supermarkets. I don't know how many persons here have purchased sweet peppers for $1,500 per pound, or purchasing yam at $600 per pound. It is more than just Melissa.
Sorry, Cliff. I'm gonna give you my microphone. Apparently, the audience at home isn't hearing some of the speakers, so I'm gonna give you my microphone.
Problem. So it's more than just Melissa. 2014, we couldn't afford food. We had the worst drought across the entire region. Every single summer, we panic in Jamaica because we have little rainfall. So we're looking at climate change generally and how that is impacting on food security. Food safety is a completely different kettle of fish. We have extensive droughts, very, very heavy wet seasons, increased strengths of hurricanes. We have lots of fires across the region, and we have soils that are poorly nourished. So we have to be looking on how we engage in sustainable form of agro-production. I remember in Dr. Wheatley's PhD thesis where he developed what they call a salt-tolerant yam variety. You remember, Doc? I think that's what was the first patent. And it was pretty much looking on how to grow yams in areas that are brackish areas that can tolerate salt conditions.
We have so many different types of soils across Jamaica, but we are not engaged in sustainable plant breeding programs to address those issues. And it's something that we have to look into, Dr. Bailey, in terms of how Jamaica develop or build a climate resilient agricultural system. We're not seeing enough protected agricultural system or greenhouses going across the region. In the summer, you can't buy lettuce. In the summer, you can't buy cabbage. In the summer, you can't buy watermelons. So you're looking at the nutrition of our population dropping and dipping during the dry and the wet months. So this is where advanced technologies, including bioengineering, I know a lot of persons don't like hearing about biotechnology and genetic modified organisms or so forth, as well as mutation breeding becomes very relevant. How do you breed planting materials or plants that are resilient to drought? How do you breed more plant materials that are more resilient to extensive flooding? These are some of the conversations we have to be looking at, because remember, food, clothing, and shelter are the primary basics of life. And now the number of basics have increased. We are looking at housing now as a major challenge and how we can redesign and ensure we build a country different codes, implement different standards to ensure that we have that level of security for our population. But a growing issue across the globe, and the region is suffering tremendously, is in terms of food security. And that's an opportunity for us scientists. I remember, Minister, when I was in grad school, we had a vibrant yam research group. We had a vibrant papaya research group. We had a tissue culture unit in the Biotechnology Center. We were focusing so much on crop development. Borders Research Station was doing extensive research on livestock and small ruminants. Where are we now in terms of agricultural research and development? We are adopting technologies and adopting varieties from other environments and hoping that they can be adopted within our space. And we're facing that undernutrition concern. So as a scientific community, we have to direct a bit more for energies and our technology. So we have the technologies here. iSense has an irradiator completely financed by the International Atomic Energy Agency. Over 4 million euros spent on that unit. And yet we're not utilizing it enough to breed plant materials that are more resilient to climate change. Climate change is not going away. So we have to adapt. We as scientists have to find solutions so we can survive, we can be more resilient, and develop experiences that we can share with others. And it's something that we have to look into as a country, and not just because of Melissa. Every year we face these problems with food security.
I hope everyone is hearing me. My work is, okay, mine is working. So let me be controversial for a moment with Cliff, all right, because it's a conversation. I'm not suggesting that food security is important, it's not important. But we should be talking about food sovereignty. Yeah. But Minister, you were at UTech with us the other day when we had the Agro-Innovation Lab. We know the geopolitics happening in the region, as it is. Now we have natural disasters at our doorstep. The conversation really needs to be about, ladies and gentlemen, food sovereignty. So I come back to the AI now, because that's why I'm on the panel.
Everything comes
the
back to
argument of the technology, we need to be more granular as scientists in this specific conversation. The AI itself can support sustainable farming through what we call organic farming, where you can use the technology specific. Let's use AI to model what is happening to the soil and the various soil types, right? And take that data, that data set, and do a careful study of it to determine what feature conditions are required to grow various crops around the country. We could say that St. Elizabeth, as it is right now, is not in a position to grow crops that will give us anything for Christmas or anything in the early new year. But to explore what is possible around the country, we now need to look at collecting that data set. Probably, Paris, you already have it. I've been asking my engineering team and the consortium that we have created to quickly find the data based on the rapid assessments that we need to be doing across the country, and let us study that in a future-proofing laboratory. Let's call it that. and take the soil type. Everything comes down to the data, you know.
Yes, that's
So
right.
everything is coming back down to the data to inform our preventative measures that should be in place to support the guardrails.
Yes, yes.
To allow us in 1, 2, 3, 5 years' time to know that we can still survive any hurricane or natural disasters.
Yes.
Every time at UTEC we put on a disaster event, like an earthquake event, one usually comes afterwards. We were realizing that in the last year.
Oh, boy,
you remember
yes.
that, guys? Right? But notwithstanding, now we're in a hurricane zone and we are having hurricanes and earthquakes and whatever else could come. The solution to a problem lies in the data. So therefore, all of us in this scientific community
Yes.
should make the data available, shared, as you suggested, Minister,
public.
so we can study it. We at UTEC are ready to take that data and use the AI binoculars to model and understand what can happen with the data and work with other scientists as a part of a learning organization. Let's call ourselves a learning organization, because the only way to get out of this is to learn our way out of it.
Together, absolutely, absolutely.
As I said, education.
Dr. Riley had a comment on that.
One of the things that we have to also bear in mind, Sean, and I'm happy you mentioned in terms of food sovereignty, we have to complement the data with practice.
True.
And I think that is one of the areas we have one of the biggest gaps. Because we know what to do, you know. We're just not doing it.
True.
We have seen other countries doing it. We are just not doing it.
Exactly.
After we developed salt, taranti, and varieties, we're not planting them. So practice, it has to come from a policy level in terms of how we implement these. And one of the major challenges when you come on to food sovereignty is your planting material. Where's our planting material? We're importing more than 80% of our seeds. How can you be a sovereign nation for food production when you don't even have your own seeds? So it has to come from that policy perspective. How do we deal with that seed and seed repository? And how do we apply the best practices that our scientists have developed? So we have the data, you know, Prof. The data is there, but we are not practicing it.
So there's a disconnect.
There's a big disconnect, and that has been a major disconnect with the scientific community and the end users.
Yeah.
Agreed.
You see what I'm saying? That is where the gap is.
Yeah.
There is a very vibrant discussion online, and I'd like to take some of those questions here. Let's start here. Dr. Riley, since you're already on the floor, let's keep it there. We had a question about fossil fuels, that we recognize that climate change is directly related to increased overuse of fossil fuels, and whether Jamaica has any plans to reduce its reliance on fossil fuels. So particularly, the person asked future energy resilience. Disasters like Hurricane Melissa highlight the fragility of our energy systems. Looking ahead, what role do you see for small modular nuclear reactors alongside renewable energy sources in building resilient, decentralized power systems that can withstand climate shocks? And how should communities balance innovation, safety, and sustainability in this transition?
You know,
Big question.
I'm very happy you asked a question, because
I didn't ask it.
The diversification of energy is really critical. And you're talking about energy security and energy poverty, and that has been a major discussion over the past months or years. Who controls the cost of energy in Jamaica? When you're purchasing fossil fuel, we do not have any form of energy security. Our prices are being determined by the producers of oil, or the importers of oil.
Yes.
And this is where the use of advanced technologies, such as nuclear technology, really comes in and gives the country that level of energy security or energy sovereignty. I am very happy in terms of the discussions and the exploration that has been undertaken by the government of Jamaica in terms of using small modular reactors to generate energy. And based on the 30-year development plan for nuclear power in Jamaica, approved by Cabinet earlier this year in January, and that has been anchored by a team known as the Nuclear Energy Working Group, chaired by the International Center of Environmental and Nuclear Sciences. The HSRA is also a member of that team, the University of Technology, UWI, CMU, a number of experts in engineering and energy is a part of that team.
What we're looking on is how do you ensure that at least a third of the energy is secured? And this is where the nuclear material comes in.
Yes.
Using enriched uranium, you're able to have your fuel cells running nice and smooth for 15 to 25 years.
Yes.
You do not need to change them every single year. The fluctuations in the market don't impact on the cost of your power. And nuclear power is considered to be clean energy. Clean energy, and there has been a number of instruments advanced through France for nuclear power to be considered to be clean energy. So as a country, we are looking on the necessary adjustments and modifications to the existing laws to allow for the exploitation and use of nuclear power as another source of energy in Jamaica. We have expanded and gained quite a bit of traction in terms of using solar power. We have expanded wind power through Wigton. We're using hydroelectricity. So we have a very diverse energy mix in Jamaica. And one of the reasons why you are able to see so many companies still operating, even though we did not have, even though so many companies lost power from the grid. So we have to have what they call a blended energy mix. It can't be a single source. As a country, we have to look in terms of how do we diversify primarily from fossil fuel, moving it from Paris, we're at about 70-80% now of fossil fuel, down to about a third of our energy and demand. Maybe another third from renewables and another third from nuclear. So it's part of the discussion, and that team is exploring the necessary steps. We have started the exploration with International Atomic Energy Agency. We have received their guidances, and we are moving full steam ahead with the necessary sensitization, siting, all the environmental impact assessment, so as to ensure that the environment is protected,
Excellent.
the people are protected, and we are the HSRs that are responsible to ensure that the environment, people, and property are protected from any form of ionization.
Yes, go ahead, Paris.
And just one thing to add is also looking at the development of the SMR technologies themselves.
Mm-hmm.
They have to shake out their own bugs. We are not going to be somebody's test bed.
Exactly.
So once the technology, the next generation technologies mature, and then scale out, we'll be able to get the right product for the right price, and without being anybody's guinea pigs.
Okay, excellent.
And a critical point, Doc, that we need to emphasize, it's not something that's going to happen tomorrow. It's a 30-year plan.
Yes, yes.
So we can't expect that everything is going to be rolled out next week and per se we're going to buy SMR, implement it. That's not how it's going to happen.
Yes,
it's a fully planned out, fully collaborative program of implementation over a 30-year period.
All right, good. Another question that came in. Thank you so much, Doc. Rethinking waste management. Carlington, you mentioned that one of your beneficiaries when you were away was focusing on waste management. And someone said in the chat, Hurricane Melissa has exposed vulnerabilities in our current waste management systems. How do you think this disaster should push us to rethink waste management, whether through policy, enabling infrastructure, or community practices to build resilience against future climate-driven events?
So actually, one of our partners, we met at a conference in Montego Bay, and we were actually looking at dump sites. Mm-hmm. One of the things that we want to do is to look at how can we utilize the materials from dump sites to actually produce energy. Excellent. And not just produce energy, but to, look at the byproducts and how that can be used in other industries. So that's something that we're actually looking at right now. We're looking at having discussions. And this must, of course, the policies are important. Because without the right policies, we're not going to be able to execute a project like this or of this scale. So it starts with the policy implementations. It starts with the partners, because there are several discussions that is happening with quite a few partners, locally, internationally. The SRC is also involved, the ODPEM, the Waste Management Department, and we're looking at scaling this. As first, we're looking at having this established here in Kingston.
Yes.
It's going to take some time. This is going to be over the next 5 years, and it's going to be done in a very modular way. Once we have that implemented, then we can look at how we're going to scale that. But that's a project that we're looking at implementing over the next 5 years.
Yes, go ahead, Prof. Thank you. Go ahead, Prof. Thorpe.
On the point of policy.
Yes.
That's an excellent point. So we want to look at the upside of our situation, while Jamaica is still in a very good place. We have the approved data protection policy, because we argue that to make informed decisions about the weather or various type of natural events, we need reliable, accurate data. Under policy and under the legislation, it is clear that the government is suggesting that, listen, we should all be data protection compliant. Now, I'm sitting on this side of the room talking about the leverage of artificial intelligence. Do we know that in order to build AI native systems that can take advantage of the data that Cliff and Paris is talking about, assumes that as organizations, as entities, both in government and private and public sector, we are all data protection compliant so we can support the data sharing.
Yes, good
right?
point.
So that's an important preface to the conversation, which I've always been advocating in several national.
How do we build capacity in the grassroots communities as they are building their own communities? What do you think could work from a kind of engineering construction perspective?
Well, let me first answer the question by saying I don't know what the government plans in dealing with these challenges, because it is a real challenge.
Yes.
The truth is the government has on ground approximately 3 million people to tend to. And a number of these individuals need home. Well, everybody needs homes.
Yes.
And there's limited land available in certain areas. Now, our truth, from an engineering standpoint, this is not us boasting, but we can engineer almost anything. But the truth is, do we have the financing to support such an engineering? But we can engineer anything. So yes, we can allow individuals to live in what's now a flood-prone area, but in a safe way. We could now, of course, it may require raising the elevations of some of these areas in that regard as well, but all that fill material is going to be very expensive. Could we design structure? If you think about how we used to build, let's say 50 years ago, our ancestors had some wisdom. And that's why they would have built these houses on what you would now say are stilts. Because they knew where the water would have arisen to, but now everybody want to be close to the ground. And now we're surprised when the ground floor flood out, as though we have new knowledge that they didn't have before. So we sadly have thrown away some of the wisdom, even how we design in terms of climate. The houses back then were architectured in a way. Remember those old houses where you had those nice little aerated blocks or wooden strips above your doors, and the roofs were higher. The ceilings were, or the roofs were sloped in a particular way, but now everybody want to get fancy. And so now everybody wants a slab roof because it's safer. Now, is there a way to keep that cool and even safer? Yes, we could put green roofs. So we could plant a garden on your rooftop. And that would now, of course, transfer all of that space, what we've taken out to put your land there, your structure there, and now transfer that to the roof. So it again keeps the space a lot cooler. It absorbs a lot more of that moisture that we have in the environment. All of that could be engineered. So we have the ideas, we have the solutions. The question is, are the people willing to go along with these engineering solutions that will solve, truly solve, and heavily mitigate a number of the challenges we're experiencing now? So that would be the big thing. Now, from a governmental standpoint, as I said, they have a big challenge in addressing the need for everyone. More studies would clearly be needed. So we need the data to first identify these areas, which you already know. Secondly, now, we would need to go in and model what would be the effect. From a coastal standpoint, we already can model from offshore and onshore what the effects would be. We have coastal structures, offshore breakwaters, we have revetments, groins. The truth is, let me give you the secret about engineering. As engineers, we don't create anything. What we do, we innovate everything. So we mimic what nature already produces and just find out the science and the the mathematics behind it and engineer a solution that follows that. That's why our tall buildings mimic trees.
Yes,
and we want it to behave like the trees. We have our dams which behave like what you see a beaver building something. We just see what nature has and simply replicate that.
Very interesting.
So that's heavily what we do. So we understand how nature works and know exactly how to work in tandem and in harmony with it. But again, we need the financing to support that. We need the clientele or clients to trust us. When we are giving you solutions to your problems that you say, no, I want one. That guy has one. We're telling you why you can't get that. And you say, but that's what I want. So you find someone to give it to you. So we need you to trust us that we will provide you with the solution that you're seeking that now provides or protects you from today and future events that we have in that case. Another big thing I want to plug for engineering. Now, in how we design, we factor into our material. We assume all materials aren't made equal. So we have what we call a factor of safety for that. So we assume the material will have some lower quality here or variations. So we put a factor of safety on that. We assume that when it comes down to the workmanship, there's going to be some variation. So we put a factor of safety on that. So even if we say our structure is designed to take a certain load or a certain wind pressure, truly it is more than that. The speed, well, I don't want to say that one. But even when it comes to our roads, because I don't want to influence people in how they behave on the road. But even when it comes to our roads and other things like that, just know that we have factored in the behaviors of humans and people in that space. We have factored
humans.
We have factored it in. However, some have gone above our factors of safety, as we're seeing. And because now, if we factor all the way up, then we can't build it because you can't afford to. So we have to put a balance, and that's why you get a speed limit for the roads. That's why you get an idea of signage telling you this is how we wanted to use the space to kind of keep it within that parameter. But we have thought about almost everything, but we just need our clients. Our biggest client is government and others to play a part in that regard.
Yes, so let me jump in and help you there with that engineering analysis.
Yes.
And model, and it will allow us to get some of that climate financing. There's also something called climate justice. The minister, we can go and talk about climate justice and tell them that we should also benefit from that and show them from the simulated efforts that we are doing as world-class Jamaican scientists, right, to the world, that we can have the outcomes that we need at this time. Because I am seeing that the information is there. Pockets of us in Jamaica are doing different things, but we are not in an ecosystem where we are all talking together.
Yes. Well said. Just briefly, Lane, go ahead.
Briefly.
And then I'll
no, I get what you're saying from the policy and the governmental standpoint, and that's perfect. But I'm still thinking about the grassroots, man. And seeing the models is not going to move me as a grassroots man. What does work? Because if you think about how we buy, think of just how we purchase. Most of the times you buy something because you've seen someone with the product. And you say, how does it work? And they say it works good, then you're quicker to believe them than you are the one who's trying to sell you the product.
Sure.
And so the same thing happens in this case. Now let's say we were to capture the data from this disaster. And we go in and we show, this is what the size member, a 2x4 looks like this. This is why it didn't work. So let's look at what a 2x6 looks like. This is why it works. So they understand in a video format, because the majority of the persons will not read the documents.
True.
I'm at the university, and I can tell you, some of our students don't even know what the library look like. So if the students don't know, because we have a change system.
In how we consume information.
So now we have to go in the video format, more pictorial, more in that manner, in order for the persons to digest it. Whether I can read or not, I can see the video. And if I can't see because of my disability, I can hear it. But there must be something that we can communicate now for the wider audience in a manner that they can easily digest and, of course, transform in how they operate thereafter.
Well said. And on that point, there are several questions, and I'm going to ask one more from the audience for Paris. But we will share all the questions. Several questions have come in, and we will share it with the panelists. And for those of you who are active on social media or WhatsApp, I'm going to implore you to make a short video answering the question and to post it. It will make some impact if we share the information. The very last question, and we haven't discussed it. Minister did allude to the cost that Melissa has had. And somehow we haven't linked that cost to safety and security. There is a growing concern about the potential for civil unrest. given the issues, given that the devastation, the absence of food and shelter and access to money is considerable in the disaster hit areas. Is there an interface between science, R&D, technology, innovation, and security and defense? How we make ourselves resilient to crime, resilient to civil unrest? Is there something we can explore there?
Absolutely. I mean, you just have to look at how the R&D budget for a country like Israel. They focus a lot of their R&D, of their economy, the budget on R&D, and you can see how that redounds to their own national security posture, the ability to be resilient in many different ways. And you see the same thing in many different parts of the world. Singapore is another good example of that. And again, there is no separation. You talk about data scientists in every science. Data scientists in every science. Again, it's something that there's a realization that this thing becomes very important. I think, Minister, you'll also appreciate that there is, is one cabinet, one government, right? Mm-hmm. You guys just handle different parts of it, but you guys talk to each other. The reality is that the reality is that nothing is perfectly sequestered and siloed away from these guys, unless you and Dr. Chang fighting about something. But I mean, there's nothing stopping it from happening, right? But we have to have that vision of the integration. Yes. Science cannot just be publish and perish. You can't just have that mindset and that's it. You have to understand the downstream impact on national security, economics, well-being, and so on. But again, even as we move into this post-relief, pre-recovery phase, the private sector is working very closely with the international relief partners, ODPEM, etc., in mobilizing the cash distribution that you're going to begin to see in a few days' time. And in part of that, we're going to have to be able to get cash to areas that would be able to provide cash to beneficiaries in the affected areas. Now, to do that, you're going to have to figure out how you get the beryllium trucks there. The movement that's the first thing. The second thing, as we move away from direct relief provisioning of food items to people in the affected areas, you reopen the shops so that they can buy food at the shop that's going to be reopened. Now we need to make sure that they are open. Yes. And why are they not open? And that's one of the things I keep looking at my phone right here is because people are attacking me right now in terms of getting stuff open. But we have to have generator, Starlink, because not only is it food and water that they need. Remittances, remittances, banks and ATMs, cash points are going to be very important. And again, in terms of how these places have to operate. Cliff can come and get a relief package at a handout place in Savannah Lamar, even though he doesn't live in Savannah Lamar. Yeah. We can't turn him away. But if Cliff shows up to get cash in South, we're going to have to run him. Yeah. So the whole relief apparatus has to change. Both in terms of the technology that's going to be used to deploy the cash movement and all those type of stuff. So the reopening of the economy is going to have that element there, and it's going to have to be guardrailed by national security principles.
Yeah. Excellent. Minister, a house of innovation is a mansion, okay? It's a housing scheme, okay? There's so much work to be done. And I really think it was a very riveting discussion. Prof. Thorpe, it felt like we're in the middle, but we have to wrap up. We've gone about an hour and a half in this discussion, and it was a very, very vibrant discussion. And I really do thank you all, not only for your contribution today, but your stellar contribution to building our nation. I think sometimes we don't quite appreciate the contribution we really do have, the impact we do have in building the resilience that we currently do enjoy. I hope for those of you who are listening in the audience, whether here or at home, you do appreciate that science, technology, innovation is not, just something to entertain bright minds, but it is something we must do to build resilience, not only against the storm, but to build resilience towards other threats that may face us and that will face us. So let's continue to have the conversation. I do apologize for those questions that we could not entertain, but we really do hope that through some collective exercise we can share some feedback to the rest of the community. And once again, thank you so much for joining Conversations in Science, Weathering the Future through Science, Food Security, and Smart Infrastructure for a Resilient Jamaica. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Ladies and gentlemen, you can know the conversation is good when I look in the audience and you're still here at this hour. And I looked around at the faces and I saw persons who were in tune. Wasn't it a rich conversation? And very sobering. Please give our panelists a hand. And our chair who most ably directed the conversation. Growing up, we heard, was it a talk show? We're not just talk, we're what? We're a substance, yes. And also action. I think it did change over time. But wait, so we're not just talk, we are substance and we are action, right? So this conversation should not just end here tonight. We expect this conversation to be moved now into policy and into procedure, into direction. Or challenged us tonight to look at resilience as a shared responsibility. And I'm sure all of us here have internalized everything that was said, and it has been sobering, and we will come together, not just the work of governments, but all of us as citizens to ensure that Jamaica thrives in this kind of climate situation. So as we bring this conversation to a close, I want to express sincere appreciation to everyone who made it here tonight and who remained here tonight. Our heartfelt thanks goes first to the Honorable Andrew Wheatley for his thoughtful keynote presentation. Our moderator, Dr. Bailey, who expertly guided the conversation tonight. Our distinguished panelists here behind us, who gave deep insights and with candor and a depth of expertise we all appreciated. We also want to give special thanks to the SRC Board of Directors, the Strategic Committee, our partners, members of the media, and all persons who attended online and in person in this important conversation. But most importantly, I don't want to leave out, and I want to express deep appreciation to the SRC team, the hardworking SRC team who worked behind the scenes to plan and execute this conversation this evening. They're a very dedicated professional team, and I'm sure we all can say that we benefited from the discussion tonight. So on behalf of the Scientific Research Council and our Executive Director, Dr. Watson, thank you for lending your voices and here tonight at this effort. Conversations like this remind us that resilience will help to shape a smarter, safer, and more sustainable Jamaica. We invite you to stay connected with us by following us, the SRC, on our various social media platforms. On Instagram at SRC Jamaica. You can find us on Facebook at the Scientific Research Council. And you can check out our website, www.src.gov.jm. And if you want to be a little more intimate with us, you can also call us. Our telephone lines, 876-927-1771 to 4. And you can also email us at edo or edoffice@src.gov.jm. Thank you for engaging with us tonight. Thank you for tolerating me tonight. And we're happy tonight, all of our scientists, to shed these clothes and go back to our official scientific work at labs as of tomorrow morning. But thank you all again for being here, and have a safe and pleasant evening.
Work for you. With research and development,
SRC reinforcing Jamaica with added strength.
From the fields to the labs, we gather and review information.
Detailed research as the foundation,
combined with tech and innovation. Working for you to fulfill the plan to develop and help uplift we nation. And that's the mission. The Scientific Research Council, making science and technology work for you.
For more information, call SRC at 876-927-1771.